Good afternoon. Back with you again for our second episode of Black Men Mastering Mental Health, Ubuntu Men. And we have a very special guest today, Jeffery Thomas. He's been a member of our Thursday evening group, which occurs on the last Thursday of every month from 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 10:30 p.m. And it gives us as black men an opportunity to come together and talk about things that may be on our minds from a mental health perspective, and we actually share and give each other feedback. Jeffrey's here not only to talk about a little bit about his upbringing and his mental health journey, but to talk about his experience in the Ubuntu group, or the Black Men's Mental Health Group. So, Jeffery, good afternoon. We're in Boston. It's about 25 degrees, but we are feeling great and we're blessed to be here. So we're going to jump right into this conversation. And before we get into the group and what it's done for you over the past year, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first, Derrick, I want to thank Lionel Blaze, our engineer for this podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the folks here at the Cambridge Art Center for hosting this recording. They're a great community resource. If you all don't know about them and you're in Cambridge, look up Cambridge Art Center. You'll find them on social media and, of course, on their website. So a little bit about myself. I am the son of Mary from Charleston, South Carolina, and of Charles, whose people are from Bruton, Alabama. And I was born in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1963.
Wow.
And that year, 60 black churches were bombed for the work they were doing registering voters. And my parents' little church in Wiggins, which is in Stone County, about 20 minutes away from Hattiesburg, Bethlehem Baptist Church, they were spared. They were not one of the 60 black churches bombed for their work registering voters. But that's what I was born into, the terrorism of the South and of white supremacy and racial oppression. And I find it really odd and shocking that we've gone from the federal government sending troops into the South to ensure and expand the rights of black people to now the federal government sending troops into black-led cities around the country to terrorize black people, mayors, as well as residents. I didn't imagine, when my child was born and we gave her the middle name Barack in 2008, that we would go back. I mean, there's always some steps forward and steps back, but I didn't think we'd be here this far with a happy and proud racist in the White House. So a little bit more about me. I have a yoga-based health intervention named for Nelson Mandela called Mandela Yoga Project. And the purpose of the yoga-based intervention is to help black people become self-healers of chronic conditions like diabetes that took my sister prematurely, and high blood pressure and addiction, depression, a lot of the things that we deal with as black people, and especially mental health issues.
I want to go back and explore something because I would be remiss if I didn't, because I think our listeners heard something that resonates with them. You mentioned the current administration, and you have somewhat of a scowl on your face. I want to explore that a little and tease that out a little bit more. How's that impacting your mental health, dealing with the current administration in D.C. right now? Because I just want to tease that out a little more before we walk down this road over the next 45 minutes.
It's demoralizing to see, like, we work with community clinics, with federally qualified clinics. They use Medicaid to provide health services to the poorest people of color in our community. And for instance, in Brockton, we're working with Brockton Neighborhood Health Center, and it's been difficult for them to adopt the Mandela Yoga intervention because of the federal funding cuts, but more importantly, because the ICE raids are terrorizing the patients so that they're reluctant to even come into the clinic to get Mandela Yoga. And a lot of the folks who work at the clinic, as well as the patients themselves, are part of mixed immigration status families. So they're not even, able to get the health care that they need simply because of the terrorism out of Washington. So it's really demoralizing. It is soul crushing. And then to know that these cuts that are coming will even further reduce people's capacity, people of color, to get health care, which is a basic human right, in my view.
Yeah, it's tough for all of us, and I'm at a loss for things that I'm allowed to say and by the FCC. You used the word demoralizing. How is that impacting your mental health on a day-to-day basis?
It makes it challenging to be motivated to keep doing this work. As a small people of color-led, community-based organization, we, most years are about $240,000 is our total budget, and so we have to, in this climate of reduced federal funding that impacts our partners, we have to go out and find private sources of funding to fill in the gaps created by the federal government and its changing posture towards equity and diversity. Meanwhile, we have the highest rates of suicide related to addiction. We have among the highest rates of depression, heart disease, untreated diabetes, just off the charts. Yet the cruelty out of this administration just says that we're still less than human, and that we don't deserve to get the services. So, lucky for me, I have a robust, mental health practice, which includes time at the gym. It includes yoga, both in the studio, and then I'm fortunate that the specific yoga sequence that we created to help Black people deal with depression and anxiety, its aim is to help calm the nervous systems of people of color in this country who we describe as racially traumatized. And sometimes I get out of the office and be in the community with young people, like here at Cambridge Arts Center, where 13, 14-year-old Black and brown teens get to practice the yoga sequence named for my late sister Sonia. And it's a sequence that is mindful movement and breathing, and we developed it that even she, when she was in renal failure and where her health was declining, if she had these poses named for her, she would have been able to do it despite her limited mobility. She could practice in a chair or practice standing, and they're poses that anyone can practice in any kind of clothing. And all they need is a room for, as my daddy the preacher would say, 2 or 3 could gather together and practice in community and practice rest. And then another big component of the sequence is what's called an embodied consent practice, where you get to show in your body what it would look like to say yes or no or maybe. And we do that 2 times during the 45-minute sequence, because how often do people of color get the opportunity to practice saying yes or no or have any decisions? And after practicing this together for a couple of months, people have reported that it has increased what we describe as their sense of agency, And if you have an increased sense of agency, that can help in these times when you're really, under duress because of the terrorism out of Washington and the impact it has on people's jobs and health and families.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Jeffrey. You mentioned your upbringing in Mississippi, and often in the monthly men's mental health group, you talk about your parents. How much of their rearing of you impacts your mental health as a man now in Boston? I just want you to kind of, as you reflect, give us some insight into that.
I guess I took it for granted when I was growing up, but we had resiliency practices, even though it was deep rural poverty in Mississippi. And then when my father pastored the last 7 years of his life in the south side of Chicago, among the poorest communities, the resiliency practice was the church, was the songs, right? Nobody knows the trouble I've seen, right? Yeah, and this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, freedom, right? This is how we've always, historically, for 400 years, responded to oppression. So that's not just in my DNA, but it comes up when I'm just driving in the car, when I'm at my desk. It is a resiliency practice, and that helps with mental health. I'm not the kind of religious person that my parents would recognize from Bethlehem Baptist Church, but right, but I do believe that we are part of something greater, and that there is a divinity in each of us that cannot be denied by any administration, by any president. So I definitely got that from my parents. And every once in a while, I get the opportunity to speak at a conference on a panel or make a presentation, and I literally hear my father's voice coming out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The hope that he shares, some of those scriptural, and I don't very often quote scriptures, but I do tell stories that I used to hear on Sundays about how people overcame. For instance, we did Mandela yoga in East Boston at a Spanish-speaking senior center, and one of the dudes there, after about 5 weeks, said that he didn't need his walker anymore because he had.
I remember you telling
right?
that story. Yeah, I remember that.
Because he had a greater sense of balance and he's stronger. And so I refer to that as the Nicodemus, pick up your bed and walk sort of moment, right?
Right.
And for people who know that story, it really resonates with them. So yeah, I don't know that I realized as a kid how much how many tools in the mental health tool belt I got from my parents. But when I became a parent of my own and was supporting a child growing up in these days when a lot of teens are where teen anxiety is very high and often will lead to peer pressure, which often leads to substance abuse. Being able to share some of the wisdom that I got, right? Especially in responding to difficult times. So periodically, she will sing. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And where did that come from? Mm-hmm. That came from Sweet Honey in the Rock, who, Bernice Johnson Reagan was, I think, 16 or 17 when she was in Georgia at the university, creating what became the sound of the civil rights movement. It was always young people.
All right.
So for her to have, from Bernice's lips, that anthem and that to be able to carry the baton forward of a resiliency practice is part of the legacy I've passed on from my parents.
Wow, that's awesome. My next question, I want to get into the group, the men's monthly mental health group, and you've been attending. I don't want to shortchange you, but at least a year.
Yeah, about 15 months.
About 15 months, okay. We've been going about 2 years, so.
I got in on the ground floor.
You did. You're one of our trailblazers, one of our pioneers, one of the individuals who attend on a more consistent basis. And
you want to know why?
Yeah, I do want to know why, but I do want to point this out before
Okay.
I get your why. Is because I had a friend of mine who attends. He was like, sometimes I just need that when I need it. So it's not we don't urge or push anyone to show up at every meeting. Sometimes you just need that feedback every 3 months or whatever. But I just want to get your feedback, and I want to hear your why and the impact that the group, what makes it unique or special to you, if I can use words to describe your experience as an entry point.
I am a black man who lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And when I lived here in this neighborhood 30 years ago, there were a lot of us. There was a big, growing, robust Haitian community. And then the developers bought the city council, and they took away rent control. And so the economic pressures of MIT and the biotech coming in from Kendall and Harvard coming in from the other side, it's meant that now a 3-bedroom apartment 4 blocks from here gets listed for $6,700 a month. Now, can't know very many black people afford $6,700 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. I can't. I had to move to a different neighborhood.
Without a yard, guys. Without a yard. Just point that out, yeah.
I had a little patio, where I would have my whiskey and cigars and have some of the brothers over, during COVID. But so I used to walk out of my house and see black people all the time. But now, in that same neighborhood, in the last few years, I've seen fewer and fewer people of color in my day-to-day going out of the house, except for the kids going into the school, So I miss being around black people. That was one of the things that I just took for granted growing up. So now, the only time of the month when I can count on seeing other black men and hearing our voices and hearing our stories and getting support from one another and just overhearing the support that people get from one another, that is very nourishing. So that's why, wherever I am, in whatever city I find myself on the third or the last Thursday of every month, I try to log in, even if it's for just the last 15 minutes, because at least I get the benediction. Right?
Are you giving the benediction, right?
Yes.
Right,
Until we meet again.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something I look forward to. It's very nourishing. It's a resource to me that I'm so grateful to have, because otherwise, it's hard getting folks together. During COVID, as I said, I set up, had brothers over to the patio outside the house, and I have these heat lamps set up, and that's how we got through COVID. Brothers would come over, and I would provide the cigars, and they would bring the whatever beverages. And then the next year, when things started opening up, there were fewer of us on a regular basis. And now, for Sunday sip and smoke in the afternoon, it's just me most Sundays. And 2 or 3 times a year, some other brothers will show up. But it's inconsistent, right, at best. So it just, it's filling a need in my soul to see, even though we're not in person, but to see and hear from the brothers.
Yeah, and just to point that out, the calls are done via Zoom. And it's totally consists of black men, and it's a safe space. And some of the ground rules to the group, because we want you to come and show up. For those of you who are listening in, is that what it was said in the group stays in the group. Nothing is recorded. One of the things we do ask our men to do, and it's totally up to them, because we live with enough rules in this society, is that we ask them to journal, because journal is such an important part of your maturation or matriculation process and growth process. And we want all of our men to be able to grow. Our next meeting is actually going to be on December 18th, because we're not going to meet on Christmas Day. So when it's a holiday, when a holiday falls on the third Thursday, we meet on the Thursday before. What advice would you give men who are kind of hesitant? And I had a conversation with my brother this weekend. We went and rode motorcycles down in Orlando, Florida, Central Florida.
Excellent.
And I shared with you that he lost a son. I lost a nephew a couple of months ago, and we went out to dinner with my nephew Derrick, and he was talking about, I think I need to come to the meeting. And what I don't even do with my relatives, I don't try to force anyone to come, but it was really cool that he was like, hey, I'm going to show up at the next meeting, because he realized that he needs those mental health support, as all of us do. So for those brothers who are just hesitant to address their mental health needs, forget about our group. It's important to seek a resource. But for those, Jeffrey, who are challenged with addressing their mental health needs, what advice would you give them? Not specifically selling the group, but I'm more interested in hearing your holistic recommendations on that. Because the group works for us, but it doesn't mean it'll work for everyone else. Yeah.
There was so much stigma to mental health challenges when I was a kid in the 70s. We would ridicule people, including our family members. We would call them crazy or loose screw. There wasn't really much of a recognition the way there is if somebody has a stomach ache, right? You go to see a doctor. But if you have anxiety that makes you not want to leave your house, agoraphobia, or if you get so depressed that you have a hard time getting out of bed and you don't want to eat, then we tend not to, even now, still tend not to seek help. And especially as a strong black man, we often think of needing help as a sign of weakness. So I don't know really that I have advice, but I have that observation. My child in the past has been challenged with anxiety, and because we live in Cambridge, we were able to, through the school, get and outside of the school, get all kinds of help for her to develop her toolkit and be able to manage and respond to her anxiety. I would say that now more than ever, there's help out there. There are people who look like us and sound like us. My therapist, who I get to see every week, is covered by insurance, is a young black woman, and as a single man out there in the dating scene, right? It is really, really incredibly helpful to have her perspective as I deal with some of my insecurities and some of my traumas from dating, long ago when I was single, and that's been enormously helpful. Like one example is I was so afraid from from my childhood growing up, I have 5 sisters, 6, one who's deceased, and I was afraid to touch a sister's hair, right? And talking about that with my black woman therapist enabled me to not be afraid to touch the hair of someone I've been dating recently. And wow, that was very liberating. But if I hadn't had that conversation with my therapist,
Wow.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
That is deep. But you took me back, and my mother's going to listen to this at some point.
Uh-oh.
But I do remember I was a mama's boy, and I remember growing up, and I remember years ago she told me, she was like, all of a sudden you never wanted to hang with me again. When I got to a certain age, I don't know if I was 11 or 12, but I do remember when I used to oil her scalp and part her hair.
Yeah.
When I was just a little boy then,
right?
And
you didn't know any better.
Yeah, but it's a positive memory that I have. I want to touch on one thing before we close out, and you mentioned, man, something really powerful. We always talk about vulnerability is power, and you were vulnerable for a second. You've been vulnerable this entire conversation, and I appreciate that. But you mentioned therapy. Something that black men oftentimes don't lend themselves to. I know I've spoken to you about, I take advantage of EAP. Right. That's important because I want to make sure I'm healthy for the people in my life mentally. What's been your journey going through therapy? How has it helped you?
So,
and how long have you been going? I guess that's.
So it was in my 20s that I first went to see a therapist. A white man. I used to have to get on the commuter rail to go out there, but he had been a therapist to a black woman who I knew, and so I was willing to try. It was sort of helpful, right? Just to be asked questions that even if I didn't answer them during the session, I would reflect on them between sessions, and it was provocative. To be asked questions. And then I had 2 white women therapists. And then I had a black male therapist. And with each encounter and with each experience, as I moved from my 20s to my 40s to my 50s and now, what I get out of it and my willingness to be open and to be candid, it's been really amazing. What's different now in my 50s and 60s that wasn't true 30 years ago is that there are all kinds of therapists of all kinds of races, stripes, genders, perspectives, accents, right? And what's really amazing is that today you can, like my child still has therapy visits. They are private pay with her. Even though she's in college in Canada, she has therapy still every week with her therapist from here, who she's seen for 3 years. So for those of us who can access private pay, we can get therapists from anywhere, any time zone. Los Angeles, Seattle. My therapy group is called And Still We Rise. And they probably have 25, 30 therapists, almost all of whom are people of color. So look them up and then look up other therapy groups. They're out there because of the work that I do.
Does race matter?
Oh, race is definitely matters.
In terms of the therapists that
For me, it has made incalculable difference. Because she knows what questions to ask me, and she knows what questions not to ask me as a black man, or how to ask me questions as a black man that my previous white therapist would have no clue about. They wouldn't know what pins and needles I was feeling, or when they were stepping into landmines, because they don't have in their range of experience, the inputs of what it's like to be black in America, what it's like to deal with a white supremacist society that doesn't even know, especially in a place like Cambridge, don't know how racist they are in the things that they do, or unwilling to even look at how they continue to perpetuate and benefit from white supremacy and racial oppression. And to be in those kinds of environments, a question that a black therapist is going to ask me is going to be very different. And my Tyrone Williams, I think is his last name, black psychiatrist here in Cambridge. The difference between him and the previous providers in helping our family, helping my child growing up in Cambridge. You know, he's from, Dr. Williams is from, I think, Georgia, but he grew up in a similar conservative black religious family, but he's been practicing here for the 30 years of his education. And so he was able to translate for me and my child, United Nations style, help me interpret what the hell I was dealing with when my kid said things to me that if I looked at my parents in the wrong way, I would get a response that is no longer appropriate.
Right, I know. Yeah, I feel that.
You know what I'm saying as a parent.
I know exactly what you're saying.
So to have him, Dr. Tyrone, be able to talk to my kid and explain to her what might be happening with me, right? That I am withholding generations of violence, right? That comes out of a disrespectful moment that could be deadly for us. So for her to be able to have a brother explain that to her in this context, so she understands the risk that she puts us at, when she's just being the teenager like all the other teenagers in the neighborhood, black and white and brown, right? So yeah, race makes a big fucking difference.
Wow, thank you. We're not going to top that last statement, so I want to end it there. And I don't know if I'll call it a high note, but I'll call it a powerful note. I want to thank Jeffery for joining us and really just discussing his mental health experience. It's very important. One of the things that we say in the group is that real men cry and real men are vulnerable. And our group is a safe space for black men to come and share. And that's why we're here. That's why Ubuntu Men exists. Again, the information will be on the screen, but we meet the last Thursday of every month via Zoom. And look, we have a protected group. It's just black men are welcome. Although we do support mental health for the masses, this is a safe space for black men. And we will have our social media platforms listed. We're asking that you come and join us and be a part of our group. We're about to celebrate our 2-year anniversary in January of 2026. And it's those individuals like Jeffery that make us who we are, black men from every walk of life. And we just want you to come and share. And if you just want to come listen, come listen. If you want to come speak, we're there for you. But I certainly want to thank Jeffery again for joining us. I love this brother. And we have a space for you. There's always space. And just looking forward to seeing you on Thursdays. Again, we have resources that we're building through our website and our social media platforms. So come follow us and become a part of our community. You guys have a great day or a good evening. And thank you for spending a little time with us.
What a blessing. What a blessing, Ubuntu. Thank you, my brother. Love you.
I love you more. Thank you. And we don't mind telling each other we love each other in the group. So thank you.